another poor performance from Everton. They had a couple of chances in that game, but ultimately it's just not been good enough this season. Just the 3 wins. You think of how many goals they've scored, just 15 goals scored as well. Dominic Calvin's not delivered. Players that are bought in, that Frank bought in the summer, really haven't delivered as well, and Frank's paid for it with his job. Let's welcome in Paul McAllister from the Toffee Blues podcast. Paul, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you. Ultimately, I think there are numerous problems with Everton Football Club, but I guess it does come down to the manager sometimes, and Frank, I felt, just wasn't good enough. Wasn't good. Got found out tactically in a few games, and ultimately couldn't get the best out of the squad he's got right now.
No, I agree with that. Frank's a really nice guy. He spoke I think Evertonians kind of took him in as one of our own when it didn't seem like a natural fit at the time.
Yep.
But you've just said, when the numbers don't lie, do they? His record of losses, wins, draws is amongst the lowest of any Everton manager of the last century. I know he's had a lot of things go against him, like injuries and poor recruitment and maybe just little moments where he's been unlucky in games with refereeing decisions, but as I said, the numbers don't lie, and when you've got the record he has, you just can't stay in the job for a prolonged period of time. And for me, this decision should have came weeks ago, if not months ago. Sacked, not the right word, but I think he should have been relieved of his duties a few weeks ago for his own sake as much as the club's.
Yeah, agreed. And let's hope for Everton's sake it hasn't been made too late. We'll talk about possible sort of changes and who comes in a bit later. When you look at your team, I've got the starting 11 up that played against West Ham. So you got Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front, England international a couple of seasons ago, Idrissa Gueye, Onana, the back three of Tarkowski, Cody, Yeremina, Jordan Pickford, one of the best goalkeepers in the league. Do you feel like you've got a good enough squad? Do you feel like these players are just underachieving right now?
No, I don't think we've got a good enough squad.
A good enough squad not to be in a relegation battle, sorry.
No,
okay.
Predominantly. We've got a dozen players who I think are very talented and can go and play much better sides who are underperforming. I think there is definitely something to that. But I think there's a lot of other players around the squad. You could at least a dozen. But you look at them and you think, who would take them in the Premier League? Yeah. Personally, I mean, the recruitment's just not been good enough. I think there's a lot of players who maybe people thought more of them than when they've actually got here. We found out that there's just kind of no place for them. Their ability is limited. I don't want to sound like I'm just absolutely hammering them, because some of it's their fault, some of it isn't. But I just think there's a lot of players there who, I don't know what the idea was when we brought them in. There was no joined up thinking from the recruitment side of it. And there's a lot of players who are seemingly just not interested, because we've heard in reports now that a couple of players have been, sent to train on their own, apparently. From rivals.
Being one of them, allegedly, yep.
One of them, Michael Keane. Whatever you think of these players, you don't put them down as players who would belong in the Championship or lower, do you? So I think, again, it's a combination of certain players have come in and not delivered as we hoped. Some players have just lost all interest, and some players are really good but have just lost form at the crucial moment.
Farhad Mashiri came on TalkSport about 2 weeks ago, sort of speaking about the fact that he's put his money where his mouth is. He has backed the managers and he's given them a lot of money. And you look at other owners of clubs who take money out of the club. I guess at least he's not doing that, especially when you think of the club up the road from you in Manchester. What do you make of Farhad Mashiri and that, what he said in terms of, look, I've given money, and he's spent nearly $500 million since the time he's been there. Is it his fault that the recruitment's just gone wrong and there's been no right way of players coming in? Is that his fault or other people on the board?
I think it's a collective. I think Farhad has to shoulder the majority of the blame, because at the end of the day, he is the man with the money. He's the man who, I imagine, gets the final say on everything. And he's employed people below him who haven't done the job adequately enough, or he's allowed people to have influence who shouldn't be having any influence based on what their track record is of failure. You are right, he's put his money where his mouth is. He has backed managers. You can't ask for more than that, but there's been times when he's given money to certain people at the club who he shouldn't have brought to the club in the first place. I mean, he said all the managerial appointments that he's made have been driven by the fans.
That's crazy. That's crazy, yeah. I don't know what he's talking about.
Calling for Marco Silva particularly. I don't remember anyone calling for Ronald Koeman in particular. I don't remember anyone calling for David Unsworth to have the job for a month when he had his little caretaker spell a few months ago. I don't even think anyone was particularly calling for Frank. I know there was, some unsavoury incidents at the time, about a year ago when he got hired, but it was basically because it was down to him and that Vitor Pereira guy who basically went on Sky Sports and basically didn't really come across the way he intended to. He was trying to pitch himself into the job, and I think Evertonians were just panicking, thinking, do we either have this guy who sounds like he's off the wall, or do we just take Frank because he's the devil we know? But Frank wasn't the top of anyone's list when we first moved Rafa Benitez away, and he's the big one. I don't know anybody who's calling for Rafa Benitez, so it just seems like a lot of passing of the buck for me, for Farhad Moshiri, when he says it's not his fault.
So many different types of managers have sort of been in charge since David Moyes left. It's funny because there were some that said David Moyes maybe should have got into Champions League a few more times with the players. You take that now, wouldn't you? But when you look at the profile of managers that have come and gone, so you've had different ones, right? Progressive managers, they say, in Roberto Martinez and Marco Silva. Experienced ones in the likes of Carlo Ancelotti and Rafa. What kind of manager do you think you need now? Like what the job is obviously to stay up. Do you risk getting a young manager with different ideas, like a De Zerbi, for example, and the job he's done at Brighton, or do you get sort of a proven one in the Premier League, like a Sean Dyche?
We need a manager at this moment in time, Everton Football Club, who will puff his chest out and I think impose his personality all over the club in every aspect of it. Someone who will really, hopefully, push back against the culture that fans are just sick and tired of, oh, well, jobs for friends. It doesn't matter if we don't win, as long as we try our best. Not really putting our best foot forwards, nothing but the best.
Paul's still there. We're going to try and get Paul McAllister back up. We are going to try and get him back up. Again, Sean Dyche, the favourite for the role right now, and he's describing a manager there that almost sounds a bit like Sean Dyche, someone that's going to almost stamp his authority, not just on the team, but the club in itself. Paul's back. Paul?
Yeah, I'm back, mate. Not sure where we broke off then.
Yeah,
but
so basically, you're just trying to say the type of manager that you want at the club.
Yeah, I would like a Sean Dyche personally, because I think Sean Dyche is the type of character who Evertonians need to come into the club right now. Someone who'll roll his sleeves up, puff his chest out, make people feel proud to get behind the club again, even in this, bad moments. And if we go down, then we're going to go down swinging. We're going to go down together as a club. We're going to be united. We're going to start the changes now, even if it's going to take a long time for them to take effect. I don't think we need someone who's got, who's going to come in and just look to please people and has a bit of a meek personality. Isn't very vocal. I think we need someone who's really, really going to come in and say, right, this is the way things are going to be from now on. We're going forwards. This is the plan. We're sticking with it, and we're not going to be knocked off course. And if bad times happen, well, then they happen. But we're going to experience them all together as a club, as a united fan base. And there's not going to be any fractious infighting, because the culture has to change at the club. And I want a manager who I think will insert his personality into every fibre of the club and just let everything drip down.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the Championship there. Obviously, Everton have been a mainstay in the Premier League. Obviously, look, you're going to have to think about the Championship because it's realistic right now, isn't it? Everton are struggling. Do you think there is an argument to say, okay, look, we do that season in the Championship, we completely press the reset button, get rid of the players that don't want to be there, the ones that are overpaid, and I'm not going to mention names, but you know who they are, and just start again? I mean, is there any benefit in that whatsoever, or is there that risk that you go down and you like a Leeds or a Nottingham Forest or a Birmingham and you stay there for years?
I just think we can't afford to go down, unfortunately. If we were going to go, then I'd like it to be the scenario that you talked about, where, okay, it's a clean slate, it's a fresh start, everyone take a breath, but there's just too much riding on the club's survival in the Premier League from a financial point of view. God, goodness knows where this leaves us with the stadium and with FFP. We lose the TV rights money. So as much as I'd like to not fear going down, because it's not the end of the world. We've seen some clubs go down and stay in the wilderness. Some clubs come right back and they're better for it. I just think if Everton go down, then we could just spiral that down a very dark hole. We can't afford to get relegated, not from an ego point of view, just a financial point of view. The club will be in a terrible, terrible state if we lose the TV rights money. So we just have to find a way somehow to stay up. And if we don't, then goodness knows what the future is for Everton Football Club.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because the season, we're only halfway through. It feels like May's coming or April's coming so quick, but realistically, we're really in December, aren't we, for the season? So there are so many games left, and you look at the table, and one win, you're up to 14th. So you just need to kind of just get victories. You just need to get in. I feel like I'm with you, by the way, about Sean Dyche. I feel like this is a manager that knows a few of your players. Obviously, he knows Connor Cody, knows Dwight McNeil, who's had a torrid season. He might be able to get those type of players going again.
I hope so. The thing with Sean Dyche, just staying on him a minute, I think he suffers a lot from perception. I think a lot of people think that, he's a percentage manager. He's an old school guy from maybe who belongs in the 1980s or something like that. But for me, Sean Dyche achieved an awful lot at Burnley. He kept them in the Premier League for a lot of years with next to no resources. He gets the most out of the least. That's something no Everton manager's done since David Moyes, really. He's a good personality in the sense that, he'll puff his chest out, like I said, and he'll let people know what he thinks, and he won't,
Paul, I want to interrupt you very quickly. We are hearing news here at TalkSport that it isn't just Sean Dyche. Bielsa, very interested in the job, former Leeds manager. If you had a choice of both, Bielsa or Sean Dyche, who would you take? He's very interested in the job, wants to come back to the Premier League. We saw what he did with Leeds first season. Fantastic football, energetic, lights up a stadium. Who would you take?
Sean Dyche, personally.
Still Sean, yeah.
I respect Bielsa, but I just don't think the players that we have can play Bielsa's sort of million miles an hour style. I mean, when he was there at Leeds, I think they broke all the records for distance covered. I'm not too sure what his situation is when, how well he speaks English. I know he had a translator at Leeds, so I don't know whether he'd be able to get his message across. If it was Bielsa, there's definitely worse options I've seen mentioned, but he wouldn't be my choice. He's, would he be a long-term appointment as well? Even if it does go well for a couple of months, he's up there age-wise. How long would he want to stick around for? I just think the club needs to go with a long-term appointment, think long-term. And personally, I think Sean Dyche at the moment, if you're going to go with a devil rather than just a complete gamble, then I think Sean Dyche would be the best option for that.
Last one, this is on Frank now. Obviously, look, you've seen Frank work now up close for just over a year. Do you think this is it for Frank in terms of at least managing in the Premier League? Do you feel like he's one of those that might just say, you know what, not for me, hasn't quite worked out, might just go abroad? Do you feel like you get another chance in the Premier League, Frank?
Probably not, sadly. God bless Frank. The fans are not angry at him. I mean, people would call him for him to go, but that was only because, as we said, the numbers didn't lie, and we just couldn't see the ship turning round under him. But everyone, kind of took him in as one of our own. We really liked his personality. He said all the right things, and we believe he really wanted what was best for the club. But it's just not worked out. And if he does manage to get another job somewhere, then tip of the cap to him. I'll follow him from afar, wish him all the best, unless he turns up with his new team at Goodison Park. But for Frank, I think probably the TV studio was probably better for him. Management's a tough gig, and it's not for everybody. I respect him for trying it. There's no shame in failing at Everton Football Club, considering how much of a circus we are. I think a lot of brilliant managers wouldn't be able to get a tune out of what's going on at the moment. But yeah, I'd be surprised if we see Frank again. But if we do, then I'll support him from afar, because I think he's a really top fella and he really gave this his best.
He certainly did. Paul, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. Paul McAllister there from the Toffee Blues podcast.